Hey, Jason, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excited about this episode. Really, when I was first doing some research on you, just understanding about you run ultra marathons. And for anybody that's listening, that's got to be beyond most people's ideal. Like an ultra is 100 miles, right?
Correct. Yeah, they really call it anything really over the marathon length of 26.2, but the majority of a mile marker that gets out there is about 100 miles. So they'll call anything that really scales past the marathon, the ultra marathon. So 30 miles, anything past that. But yeah, typically the mile marker is that 100 miler.
Yeah, those don't get done by thinking about it overnight. It usually takes a little bit of planning, I'm sure, and a whole different schedule of how you get there and arrive to that. But, and by the way, so I didn't tell you this, but so now I may not look like it because I never ran cross country, but I kind of did. In my high school in Missouri takes state almost every year in cross country, right? And so I'm telling you, from the minute you get into sixth grade, where you actually have sports that you can play in, the only way you get to play any other sport is everybody has to run cross country. Even on our breaks, like we have recess, the kids that are playing sports are just running laps, right? And there's one guy who is the manager. He's got you have a little booklet, and he's giving little hole punches. And so at a very young age, that's how they won state every year. Is they had a feeder program, getting kids to start running early and running often. And I will say, growing up and watching those kids, my classmates log in miles every morning was a dedication that I don't think you see in very many sports. So anyways, I just want to congratulate you on being able to do that. That takes dedication, planning, and it takes commitment. So it's amazing.
I appreciate that. It's something you said that's key there, the commitment, right? Running's like most things are you can go play them, right? You can play football, you can play soccer, you can play basketball. Running's running. And so what you find there is that when you're playing these other sports, there's this point of that you have your enjoyment, right? And there's the enjoyment in running, but there's that mental and physical aspect to it, right? Because easily enough, you could just be running and just decide to stop, right? Then the run's over. Right. But the commitment of it as you continue to grow into these longer phases and you don't know the unknown of where your body can push it, that's really where you can find your outside of how far you can go. So if you think about it, right, like the 100 miler, I didn't know how to train for that, right? Because I'd done, countless marathons, and there's marathon programs, there's all these other programs showing you here's the steps to do it. Follow this 4, 6, 8 week program, and lo and behold, you'll be ready, do a couple 20-mile races before you do the marathon, right? Well, with the 100 miler, it's not 2 weeks out or a month out, I'm gonna be running a couple 80 milers just to get myself up there, right? So it was just, what do I do, right? And that's it's a good transition. What do we do in our entrepreneur journey? What do we do in life, right? And many times we want that perfect roadmap. We want to have this thing dialed out where if I do all these steps, I'll have this goal right here. I know exactly what to go. And then you get so fearful of starting, one, because maybe you've set this huge goal that you just can't comprehend because you've never done it. But right. Two, that first step smacks you in the face because it's completely different from what you thought, right? So you'll sit on the sideline waiting to take action. And so I couldn't figure out really how to train for this. So I just said, well, I'm just going to get up and run 6 miles every day. And I'll just run that every day, whether my knee hurts, my ear hurts, I'm sick, it's snowing out, it's raining out, it's whatever. Just do that every morning. Get up every morning and do that. And on that part, that will be my training. Now in there, I did some longer runs and some other things in between, but I did that consistently because what I found in these longer runs is that so many points, you can just stop. Right. And you'll see, especially when you do the 100 mile, or sometimes they'll layer in there a 50 mile, and you'll see a lot of people with the expectation to do the 100 mile, and then they get to that comfort spot of 50 and be I guess that's good enough. Right. And so they'll stop at that point. But most of the journey of life is just setting these stages where if you can accomplish these goals throughout, all of a sudden you turn around and you're miles down the road from where you were. And so even on the 100 mile, I said, okay, well, I don't know how to run 100 miles. So if I stand here at 6 a.m, say I'm going to, I can't wait to finish 100 miles, my mind is going to try and scare me away and try and stop me from where I'm going. And so if I just get out there, my first goal was let me just get to that first aid station. It's about 5 miles away. I know I can run that far. I've done that many times, right? Get there. Now I have a little drink, and now let me just run to the next one, and then run to the next one, and then let me run to the next one. Now I'm 20 miles in, and let me just see if I can maybe at some point can I just run to the bridge? Can I just run another 1,000 steps? Can I just run to, the next 500 feet? Can I just run over that hill right there? And each time I'll figure it out. Let me just see if I get there. And if something changes, then I can reassess it, right? And all of a sudden, you look behind you and you're 100 miles down. And it was a series of small little wins that got me there. And usually what we do is we see too much on social media, these big wins where you want that. You think that you have to do something all of a sudden and have this huge result. But if we would just set up small layers of steps throughout, we find the journey, which we're on the entire time, becomes a lot more achievable. And all of a sudden, we're well past where we thought we'd ever be with our goal.
Yeah, I totally get that. I equate that to mountain climbing here in Arizona. So there's a couple of really good climbs that you can do. And one's it's called Camelback Mountain. Have you ever done it, Camelback?
No, I haven't.
It's a 2.5 hour. Well, for you, it's probably 2. For me, it's definitely 2.5. Right? It's a pretty good sized mountain. But when you look at it first, you're like, dude. But it really is. That's how I got up. It was like, I just want to go another 100 feet.
It's huge.
And then you get it. And then when you get to the top, you're like, dude, that was wow, man. You're just looking back, you're like, that was easy, man. You look back at the journey and you feel rewarded when for me, that's why I love to get to the top. There's a view, right? You're like, oh, that's the reward, right? Just like all the hard work. So I totally relate it to that story and that commitment. And I think you're right. In business, that is the challenge for most people. Think that you got to have instant gratification. Yeah. Right. But investing is not set up that way. Multifamily is definitely not set up that way, I don't think, right? Yep. No. So let's jump into your multifamily journey here. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done in the multifamily space?
Sure. So we brought our first property in 2017. Before that, I had grown up. I'd lived in New York City for a while. Had opened some restaurants and bars, opened and sold a brewery. So I had done a number of things on that side of the business. And then Hurricane Sandy happened in the East Coast and just decimated just so many homes, right? Well, my dad has a small construction business that was really targeted to flood zone properties. So he does a lot of work in this space. And his business, you can imagine before a huge storm, there's only so many people that want to move or lift a home, right? So he would do like 11 or 12 projects a year. Lo and behold, that storm happens and he's 1,000 calls a day right away because of just all the devastation. So my brother, who was working for me, my wife now, who was my girlfriend at the time, Peely, we decided to move out and just help dad with the family business. So we did that for a couple of years and that was great. But the family business was never really the direction I wanted to go, just because we constantly put ourselves in the service position. And you find out in some of the aspects of real estate where you take a day off, there's no revenue, right? Because you can't build a team around you, especially in a business that's so detailed as house moving. It's hard to just, hire on a second team already because it's so intricate and just dangerous, right? So we kept looking for a way that there was 25 hours in a day, 8 days a week during that time. We could have used them, right? And we were so busy. And all of a sudden, Peely, now my wife, we're having our first child. And we just said, we got to find a way to get our time back. We got to figure something out. And the word real estate kept popping up at that term. It can mean a million different things. So we thought we'd do what was logical. And we went out there. She got a real estate license, wife pregnant. And we started wholesaling and flipping homes, doing Airbnb, just doing a lot of different things. And what quickly came to fruition is that here we are, so busy in the construction side, and now we just layer on a bunch of other active stuff, right? Yeah. So we buy these. We've come to a point where she meets someone at a RIA, and I was in New Jersey at that time, I'm now in Tennessee, and she met someone who was doing out-of-state rentals, and they were just buying single-family houses, fixing them up, and we were like, that sounds like an interesting idea, right? We'd always been big in building teams when we were doing the restaurants and the bars, and we went and started buying duplexes, triplexes, and some quads that were completely distressed, got renovations in there, had a property manager, and lo and behold, having everything done without us after doing it, and then checks start showing in the mail, that was that aha moment. We were just like, oh, that makes sense. But that's not going to be scalable, right? Having like 50 duplexes all around everywhere. You're
still all around everywhere, right?
Yeah, it was going to be a logistical nightmare. So we kept asking that question, what else is there, right? And that's so usually it's one of the most important things I'd say is that if I'm not there, what else is there? And I came upon a podcast just like this, just talking about large multifamily. And I was like, that's it, right? That's it, because it gives you all those different pieces and gives you all that economies of scale built into one building. right? And so we could look at that and use our model to go. And it kind of equated when we had, I had a 12-unit restaurant and I had one that could seat 100 people, right? Dinner's the same time, so you still had your fixed cost, right? So it's like if you had a 12-unit and you're trying to put a leasing person and a maintenance person, you can't afford them. But in a 100-unit building, you start treating it more like a business. So everything just started to make sense. And we sold off all the 2s and 3s, went all in just to surrounding ourselves people like this that were just talking about multifamily, learn as much as we could. And got from there, it was about 2016, we started that. 2017, in the middle of 2017, we brought a 94 unit in Louisville, Kentucky. And that was the first of, we've probably, I think we're like 23 or 24 transactions since of buying multifamily in about 5 to 6 markets throughout, which has just been great. So we've really loved the space. Can't see us going the other direction. Just so many different ways for us to win, our team to win, investors to win. So that's where we've gone so far. So
on that first deal, how did you find it and how did you raise the money for it?
Sure. So we had a couple great suggestions, and we just kept listening to what people were doing to see what was going to work for us. One was start building your investor network well ahead of finding the deal, right? And so we were out there. Basically, we came to a conclusion that we got very certain of what we wanted. So we wanted 75 to 150 units, BC assets built between 1975 and 2000 in certain submarkets in Louisville. Right. So we were very dialed in, right? And so we knew exactly what we wanted, and I was able to take that and model out what returns would be. And I made a simple 1-page sheet. It was probably looks like it was in crayon if I went back and found it again, and just started going out to my friends and family and just telling them what we were going to do. Because usually, even if you find a great deal in the beginning, the hard point is people have to get over the hurdle of you now doing something that's odd or different from what they know you as. So here I am. Jason, has got breweries, he got bars, working construction. All of a sudden now I'm buying this apartment building, right? And that's a question within itself for you and as an investor. Then you have to explain to them why multifamily, like why the space, like why.
But you also have a track record of success, and that doesn't hurt,
absolutely.
Right? So you're like,
absolutely,
I've done all these things, but I've always been successful. But here's the new trajectory that we're going for. Usually this is a story. So you love that you built a story around why you're moving into this new direction, right?
Absolutely.
And then you started sharing it with everybody. It's so important
what you said, because people will say, well, I've never done this before, how I can raise money, but it's all how you showed up before. If you've said something and you do what you say, like that stands on its own to get you out of the gate. Yeah. So we would go in there and we would show them what we wanted. We would show them what we're going to do, give them time to dissect and just understand it there, and then get soft commitments from them. Right? We would just say, hey, listen, like, is this something you'd be interested in when we find this deal? And you're like, how much? Like 25 or 50,000. And so we were able, we went out and had somewhere like over $1 million of people that were like interested. So we're like, okay, cool. The whole time we're going out there looking at properties, and we were just going through brokers, same traditional routes. But we started asking property managers that we were going to work with, insurance agents, and really just telling everybody what we're going to do. And usually that's a piece, just tell everybody.
Putting it out there.
You never know.
No one walks around with a sign of how much money they have, in their bank account, and they're wanting to place, right? So you got to have these conversations, because there's millionaires next to you all the time.
Oh yeah.
That you don't know. They could have been working at Intel for 20 years, and now they've just retired, and hell, they got $1 million and just sitting there in their old 401k they got to do something with. I've met these types of people, and they're out there everywhere, and they look very ordinary. Yeah,
1,000%, right? That's the same thing.
Most people that have money don't look like they got money, by the way.
Yeah, it's just, and that's why we don't want to filter out who we're going to speak to. Just because if you're excited about it, just go talk to people. You never be surprised. And even if they don't have the money, I guarantee if you're like, hey, listen, that's cool. If today, now is not the right time, no problem. Do you know anybody else who this might be right for? Everybody wants to help.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that the fact, because this is my belief as well, and this is where I started. I started with friends and family. I think that was, people sometimes are like, oh gosh, well, my friends or family are all broke. But maybe they know people that they're not. And like, that's usually the case. It's not always the friends and family that are going to give you their money, but they're going to lead you to people that can. And then starts the journey. Like you said, you started throwing out seed, Jason, before you even had a deal.
Correct. And you know what's great about friends and family? Like, even if they don't have the funds, they're going to be the softest on you and the most critical at the same time when you go speak to them, right? And so you get both sides of it. So you get the roughest of the advance because they know they know all sides of you, but in the same part, they're a softball approach because it's an easier conversation because you already have a warm commitment. But it also helps you identify questions that potentially could come up in a future conversation. So when you go out to that next conversation, you're not trying it out, because you've already had a number of ones with people who know you.
And I always say, who's the best to practice on, right?
Yeah,
because really a lot of this is repetition. It's about wordsmithing too, right? Understanding how to overcome objections and not be going, to be confident, right? Confident comes with practice. Again, probably back to your 100-miler, right? You don't get good unless you keep doing it. You're repetitive. You go every time, right? Yeah. Then you get cadence.
And that's some of the difficulty when someone says, I'll just wait to find a deal, then I'll go raise the money, right? Because then you're put at a disservice, because at that time you have to ask and you need the money, right? So there's a lot more pressure on you because you haven't been able to build that up. So
you're
the more
more likely to fail that way. I've seen a lot of new people totally shoot themselves in the foot by not going and starting their capital raise portion of it early. You got to do it way early, and you really do have to do. It's like everybody's got to know what you're doing, right?
Correct.
And then you've got to follow up like crazy.
Yeah, time goes so quick, right? When you get a deal on there, depending on time and market, like you have a lot of moving pieces, right? And if you're doing a lot of this from yourself, between, the due diligence, putting together the team, bank, raising money, like there's all these things happening.
I mean, you've lit something, you lit a big firecracker, right? That thing's, once you put one under contract, it's like lighting the firework. It's going to go off.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, right? But everything's moving in that same path so quick. So the more things you can control, right? Because there's a lot of things you can't control, right? That the lender's going to take their time, and all of a sudden every 4 or 6 or 9 days be like, we need this right now, right? And they're just going to do that to you for out, and you have to jump, right? So the more things you can be ahead of, like that you can have prepared when you get into the deal, that puts you in the driver's seat. You don't want to be behind running like crazy trying to figure out all these different things you're missing and what you missed and what's dropped, while the deal is trying to get closed.
And where are you guys at today? So you started 2017. We're now at 2022. What have you accomplished, like assets under management? Can you give us a little insight of what you've done?
Sure. We're about overall acquired about 2,500 units. We've sold 12 of those Projects. So we got a full cycle on 12 of them. So of the remaining, we're somewhere over the 1,000 mark. We have now that we're down here in Tennessee, I come from a lot of construction experience. We've been pushing into about 10% on development. So we have a 236 unit, an 11 unit, and a 72 unit here right in our backyard here that are going through various stages of development for either multifamily or townhomes. So there's been a lot going on, but focus still is multifamily. There's just so much energy there, regardless, what we see with rates and other points. Like, let's talk
about the full cycle of a deal too, and how does that feel, right? Because you don't necessarily now. You probably came in at a really nice time. 2017 was a great time, and if you went some full cycles on something, that was a great 5-6 years to, push the envelopes and probably had some pretty good exits, right? Probably better than expected exits too, just with cap rate compressions.
Exactly. And that's one of the things about these deals is that we can go, what's going to be the whole period, a 5 or 7 year hold period. But for investors to understand is that we want to get them the best return in the best timeline that we can filter, right? And we also want to make a good decision to seek the best return at the best stage, right? And so a lot of these we're able to capitalize early, right? A lot of these anywhere between 12 months and 42 months on deals because of the inherent improvement. And a lot of this is that we were able to get ahead on business plan, or the market, also assisted, or the market really carried on those points, all those in between here. So I always, if the question comes like, why'd you decide to sell? It's that we've exceeded expectations on where our returns sit. And, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush.
No one said that taking a little bit of profit off the table is a bad thing. I've never heard anyone ever say that. Oh my God, you left money on the table. No, they'll be like, good job, right?
Correct.
And here's my belief on that too. Is we had a couple that we exited early. There was a 5-year plan. We exited it in 3, and it's like when you hit your business plan truly, or even if it's early, there's not a whole lot of more value left in the deal.
Yeah.
And I always say, why do you sell a property? Well, I think we're in the cash flow game, right?
Yeah.
That's my goal. And usually you can buy more cash flow by going into another deal.
Yeah, and that's a great question. Yeah, the one we sold just over 12 months, we had turned like 96% of the units, right? And so now we're so equity heavy based on just the improvement and just the valuation, and we're sitting here, just the cash flow is going to only be able to continue to increase based on our yearly or monthly adjustments here. So you look at it and say, I know we were intending to hold this for 5 or 6 years, but at this point, holding back the potential or even being able to recycle that money based on just where we've been able to get in the business plan.
True. And I always tell people this too, like this, when you do the math behind it too, sometimes you're like, hey, if I exit, I'll make $3 million. Or I can take, if I don't exit, I'm making $100,000 for the next 4 years in a row, right? So I'm making $400K. I'm like, ugh. Or I make $3 million right now. You're like, wait, let me take that $3 million, invest in my own deal. Maybe I still take some other people in as partners, but now I've got a big chunk where I'm the investor in my own deal. So not only is my money working, I'm still getting the GP. And then that is the compounding. I think that's what everybody really strives to do sometimes, is like, well, I want to be the only investor in my deal and, the only GP. Well, I think that's how you do it, right? You start looking at stuff like that and sell when it makes the most opportunity, invest in your own deals, double that money as a return as well. And then those things start to come and reward you, where you can start really going in on some of your own deals if that's what you choose.
Exactly. And that's really a great point here, is that partnerships serve a great purpose, right? They help you, whether it's starting out or whether, or whether it's building or wherever you're scaling up, but at the same part, more you can go back to capitalize and getting back to controlling the narrative in your project. I mean, that's so important. It's a key role, right? And so, we were lucky enough, we were able to do, as GPs, my wife and I, the first one ourselves, but we've now gone and done a lot on partnerships. And because I found that at first, before we started growing our internal team here, is that the limitations was based on me, right? Because just like I said, all the hats, asset management, due diligence, capital raising, lead generation, lender relationship, third party relationship, all those different things were on me, right? And so there's only one me, one mouth. There's only
one guy on the hamster wheel running around, right?
Correct. And so that becomes, as you continue to grow and buy more projects, becomes your limitation. And so you can defeat that by going out there and finding other partners who are strong in different things that you could take off your plate, or bringing people in-house, right? And depending on the model, they both serve the role.
They both serve a role. I've done both, right? Yeah. So, I mean, when I first started, I had partners. I realized that what I wanted to create was a company. And so when we started making more income, we're like, okay, we can afford another team member, someone that we pay a salary, someone that gets it. And then as you start to build that, now almost everybody that we have is on salary, part of our team.
Yeah, right? and that's huge, right? Because you think about that, and usually the thing is, well, how can I afford that person? And it's not so much the affording today. And usually we break it out, like say the person's, I don't know, 50,000, 75,000, 100,000. We think of it on that point, right? But if you break that down and say, I don't know, 60,000 for easy math, that's 5,000 a month, right? So right now they have to give you $5,000 of your time back or $5,000 of value. Yeah. And if they can accomplish any of those roles, it puts you in a better position to go back out there and succeed in the market, because you were doing a role that was limiting you and limiting your growth.
Amen. Right. And once you start, and it doesn't take a big team. Like I know, how big is your team now?
So we have 5 with the 6th one starting at the new year.
Yeah, I have a team of 5 as well. So we have like about $250 million in assets. So and like we manage that pretty damn well. I mean, like we're looking to add 2 more players. We're actually looking at adding a couple of financial advisors that will go out and full-time raise capital for us. And when I say that, they're working as salary employees that get quarterly bonuses. Just disclaimer, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
They're not paid on how much they raise, but they are a profit sharing, right? But the whole thought behind that is it doesn't take a whole large team in the multifamily space to get all the pieces, right? And once you do that, then you really can elevate yourself to the CEO, and your team will, I mean, if you build it right, will work, and it'll work beautifully.
Yeah, we are the overlap, and it's how soon we can realize that we're usually the bottleneck, and that's always been my point of contention is I'm the bottleneck, right? And I've been too stubborn. You know, I come from an Italian family. I'm too stubborn to realize it earlier, and so I keep trying to be cognizant of it because I'm the bottleneck, right? At every point, if something's not growing, it's me. It's not anything to do with my team. It's either I haven't trained them well because I'm too busy doing something else, or I just haven't brought someone on that could help me there.
Yeah. And listen, to grow your team, SOPs, right? I mean, talk about that a little bit, right? What have you guys put in place to help your team members grow and thrive?
So the goal here is when you bring on team members, that if your intention is continue to grow, is that you want to try and shoot practice that they can follow, right? They can go in there, because if you are stuck at every point hand-holding them because they don't have a process in place, then on that front, you are again the bottleneck because you're taking yourself away. And the same part, as you continue to grow, that person themselves may grow into maybe a managerial position or something else. So you want something detailed, because when that next person comes in, you don't want to lose 1, 3, 6 months of someone's time while they're sitting there hand-holding them as well. So the more you can have checks and balances where someone can fall back on and the guidelines that you want to grow into, which it's not easy, right? Because that takes a lot of your commitment to do it. But I've heard many countless stories where people hire someone like, I just spent 4 months training them, and then, got ill or just went and took another job, and now I have to do it all over again. And it's overwhelming because they didn't write anything down. Yeah. Right. But if they had recorded the process, then the next person can come in and fill that role and then have questions at least about what you build out here. Right. Yeah. And people always say, well, I don't know the role. And the other way is that you hire good people and you have them help you craft it, right? Because if you have them,
once you have a team, you're like, hold on, what are you doing right now? Is there a spot for that? Is there a SOP on that? No, create one, right?
Yep.
Here's your 100%. Format for creating the SOP, right?
100%. Because the same thing, I also don't want to, if I find good talent, I also don't want to say, do it exactly like this, because then I'm also going to stop them from having that potential.
Yeah. So, it's funny because you said your own restaurants well, right?
Yeah. So not anymore, but I did in the past.
But you back in the past, right? So so I believe that restaurants do this the best, right? I used to be a restaurant manager for a steakhouse, and they had a process for every position, right? From us, you go back, back house, it's like the prep guy. He's got a whole manual that he can go through and explains exactly the master recipes to the guy on the salad guy. Everything's precise, right? To the server, how they do it. And so they have a manual for everything that one person does. And I always thought like that was where I kind of got my inspiration of everybody should have kind of a manual of here's my spot, here's kind of what it is, and here's the things that I'm going to do. And you can go through it. When it's set up that way, you can really replicate yourself fairly quickly, right?
Yeah, in fact, I was thinking it's one of the first restaurants and bar jobs I worked at Fridays, right? And they have the built out process thing. I worked at a ton of just small mom and pop things, all kinds of things. But back in Pennsylvania, when I worked at Fridays, and their build out is amazing. But what you get is like, if it makes sense, if you want to grow and scale, you want uniformity across your company, right? Yeah. So if everybody's on the same page of what they're doing, then it doesn't matter if one person comes into the ecosystem, whether it's through this person or the other person, the experience is going to be the same. And lots of that with restaurants too, is that if they're a chain or other points, there's many restaurants, they don't want, unless that's the absolute desire, typically they want the same approach what expectations will be if you walk into one or the other, right? And that's everything from just how things look, how things dress, the type of menus, the type of food, the type of feel, right? And that's how you can look at business.
Even their culture, right? So what they're really trying to do is their culture, right? So I think what I really believe in is, like, when I was in the restaurant business, we were in the steakhouse, we're Charleston. They're like, our competitor was Outback, right? So it's like maybe Fridays, but we wouldn't consider Fridays a little down the road. But like, Outback would be our competitor. We're like, dude, screw Outback, right? Like, Outback, if you ever go to Outback, just by the way, if you go and order, you'll have a table of 10, we'll say, right? They're going to come and they're going to sell off the food. No one's going to know who's got what, right? So it's going to be like the servers will be like, who had the whatever. Now at Charleston's, we did what's called positions, right? So every table you go to, there's position 1, 2, 3, 4. And so you're ordering by position. And when it comes out of the restaurant, right, they're like, hey, this is seat 1, 2, 3, 4. And so you already know where the food goes. And we're like, but that little thing right there was like, no. It's like everybody's chests went out and expanded. We're like, no, we're Charleston's. We're not freaking Outback.
Yeah.
And I think that's the culture piece. And I see that your company has that as well. It's the little thing that's the little extra that makes that sauce so much better.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. You think of something that just can make the experience so much better. Instead of just people out there holding plates out there, you just come down and just put your food down, right? Because they know what you order. Like just simple things like that someone made the choice, or they just haven't thought to, just decided that we're just going to go out there and just call people's name out, or just call food out, and just hopefully someone's going to put their hand up, right?
Yeah.
And the logistical point of just going there and having a simple thing is just allocating the positions there, is that you can set up every meal just to come out as determined, put it right down in front of them without this confusion that goes on there as well.
Yeah. Which is a much like, I love how food represents multifamily, because there's so many things that go on in a restaurant. There are multiple different pieces in different departments. And I think that's a lot of it. We have acquisitions, we're trying to find deals, getting broker relationships. You're spinning another plate. It's like, we got to go find money. How do we, all those people that we could do. And really, I think as our job as CEOs or people that are aspiring to that, your job is to be the master puppet holder, right? Or the commander in chief, really. I mean, you're just trying to say, here's what we need to do. Here's what we give people good direction and clear directions. When you do that, your team thrives.
Yeah, 100%. And restaurants do speak so funny, right? Because it's always such a changing environment. You meet so many different people. It's a great space that if you come from the restaurant, you just get in front of so many different people, right? And so it's always good to just have so many different conversations. And sometimes when you come to anything, like the more you can be exposed to just so many different talk tracks, so many different people, so many different experiences, the more prepared you are on any capacity to go out there and talk to new people, right? Because sometimes we think to talk to everybody as if it's us, right? So I like everybody's the same person as me. So when I talk here, but for this, just understanding how you can talk to other people, the restaurants are huge for that.
What do you think is your favorite piece of the journey so far in the multifamily space?
I think I've made a lot of friends, right? And that's been cool, right? You make a lot of friends, a lot of people that you connect with, whether it just be like, like talking for the first time here, like, that kind of friendship, or just investors who we've come into our network and now we've become friends. Like that's been really interesting, right? Because when you're doing your own thing, right? You like say you go and work at, office supplies for 25 years, you're only exposed to so many different people. Well, here you meet so many different people, so many different injuries, so many different expectations of what they can do, right? And that was part of the reason even starting our mastermind, is that, sometimes people are just one step from doing what they want, and they just need that one quick thing. And when you see people get out there and do it and just say, I'm going to do this, and then it clicks and they get it done, like that's huge. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to see the reward and just how beneficial it can be. Because, if you were to say, hey, you're, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years ago, I'm a bartender, right? And I'd be doing what I was doing today. Like it would be like, what? Right. And so the transition.
Hit yourself, right? Yeah.
But it's all possible. So if you set your mind to it and can set yourself some clear steps and just start knocking them down, anybody who's interested in doing this space can get in there. Everybody's qualified. But most of the time it's us getting past our minds, right? That's the biggest piece. Like I can't get past my mind. There's nothing out there holding you back. It's you just keeping yourself back.
Yeah, I truly agree. Now, what would you say that's your favorite thing to do in the multifamily? What are you best at? What's Jason best at?
So asset management and underwriting. And so I have a pretty good, strong background in finance where that's what I went to college for. So like numbers, I love numbers. They come to me easily, right? And so, but in that front, there are two roles here where, again, like I could do underwriting and asset management, but if I don't have leads and money, then I got nothing to do, right? And so that same part is, those are my strong points where if I said that this is where I want to desire, I like the project side, I like those other points, but I've brought in people onto the team to help in those capacities here, because I can't get myself bogged down in all those different points. I do attend all the weekly meetings we have with property management. Every property I attend those, but the in betweens, right? If something needs to happen on the ground or depart, the team is now in place that they can handle those. Even the initial underwriting, the team will go through the team before it comes to me. So I'm not in there doing the initial plugins that take the majority of the time, because that again is me being my own limitation. Yep. But in that same front, the leads and the money are most important, right? We have an acquisition person, and money. We actually have someone, my brother, who's going to come on and work for us in the new year, right? And he's going to focus on the capital side. But on that same front, that's where your energy needs to go. Because if you can control one of them, you're in a good spot. If you have leads, great. You can go out there and find someone who can be partners on the money. If you have money, same thing. You can find someone who can be partners on the lead. But if you can handle and have the capacity to take on both, then you control the experience.
Amen. Really, you get control the GP. You can control who gets to come into your deal. Maybe there's some partners, co-sponsors that come in with you as well. But at the end of the day, you're controlling the whole entire project, and that's the only way that I recommend to do it, because it's way much funner to be the puppet master than it is to be on the one part where. And listen, don't get me wrong. Any part, whatever it takes to get in your first deal, I'm going to say that's generally what you should do. You need experience, but firmly know where you want to go and start working towards that goal daily. I think that's a really good thing to live by. So what would you not do again? Like if has there been a mistake that you say, oh gosh, we won't be doing that thing again?
So two things is that, I had the plan down in the beginning. So we did the first one, then we waited about a year to do the second one, right? So hindsight's 20/20, but in the deals we could have gotten again, if we were just more, I guess, aggressive at that time, it would have reaped rewards, right? So, but that was fine. We made sure the process was in place and was hard line. The next thing is definitely in hiring, right? I waited too long to hire people, right? And I again became my bottleneck. And we've been very specific with our management companies, and most experience has been very good. A couple have not been ideal, and you wait that extra month if it does, things don't get better. In most things in life, right? You can set the stage, and if things aren't what you want, most of the time it's either that there's a misunderstanding, which might be coming from you, or they're not having the capacity to fill your needs. And so when that time comes, move. I mean, that's the thing. There's no waiting around. It's like hoping that you have the relationship.
All management companies suck. We'll just get that out of the way. That's our small disclaimer. Have you ever thought about?
They are tough. They're not easy. We've actually, the smaller properties we now manage in house.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have you thought about going into and be vertically integrated? Right.
Yeah. So right now we have 3 that we manage in house, and not for nothing, collections do tremendously well. Leasing, right? We're having one project that was the company kept giving me 9 different reasons why leasing was going to be a beast, and we couldn't find one piece to basically support that we should have trouble leasing here. So we moved on to us, and the 6 vacancies we turned around. I think they had them off the board in like 3 weeks. Right?
We are slowly transitioning. We probably got about a year to 2 year plan to bring on that in-house for us.
Awesome.
And it really is about control. I think it's about understanding, controlling the product more so than it's not a profit source for us, right? You would never get into the property management business to make more profit. Like, oh, I'm going to make money off the property management side, but it is you can make more profit organically by doing what you said, being a more efficient operator, doing it the right way. My biggest thing that I really wanted to do, where I feel like most management companies fail, Jason, let me know if you agree, is in staffing. Staffing is our hardest thing, right?
Yeah,
and
you're killed either by the leasing person or the maintenance person, or a combination of both. And also, if you have an asset manager or regional manager that's coming from the management company, they may be poor too, because if they're your point, right, and then you give them something of a need, well, depending on how they relay that need, if they have 12 different properties that they're overseeing right now, you may be 15th down the line and they may forget or all these other points, right? And so just time is everything.
And by the way, that's usually what's happening. They're loaded with about 15 properties, by
Correct.
the way, kids. And so you have to really, as soon as you can hire an asset manager, that's your first piece. Or you got to do it yourself. You've got to be on them to hold your dreams and wishes alive, because most third-party management companies understand they're fee-based. right? So they make fees regardless of if your property does well or not. Now, if it does well, they think that you'll keep them. But if it does just average, most people are going to keep them, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to fire them. So there's no incentive to go out and crush. Now, for us as owner operators, our only goal is to go out and crush, right? When we do that well, we effectively hit our business plan.
If your plan is the third-party management, this should be a key piece for you to decide, to make sure you have in your pocket or on your team when you're going into a market. So if you're saying what market you come into, right? If you can't find a good property manager, well, the solution is you're managing it yourself or you're not going in that market, right? There's not one that's just going to magically show up, and you don't want to hope for the best, because you may have the perfect plan, but if they can't implement the plan, it's over for naught.
Yeah, it really is. And so this goes back to my restaurant business years. So one of the things that they used to do in my restaurant, they had what's called MITs, managers in training.
I got it. Yeah.
And I feel like now that I've got a big enough portfolio, there's a time where we're going to start doing this, and we're just going to hire people and make each property pay a small fee to the collective to have people that are, these young college kids or whatever that, want a management job. And we just have a training properties, and they know that they're deployable, right? That's the thought. You hire them with like, hey, listen, we're going to train you. We're going to set you for, a month with our training maintenance guy, so you can understand what good maintenance should look like, right?
Yeah, that's great.
And then just go through the whole loop. We're so close. We're not there yet, but we are actively building it now, what it's going to look like. And that's going to be a piece that we're going to include is an MIT program, because I feel like that's our weakest link. When, we take over an asset, most times you take over a property, Jason, we have all the crap staff that's there.
Yeah.
They're usually not the ones that are going to take the property to the next level. Right?
Yeah, it's the same thing. And usually it's hard on 2 points. It's hard to keep the current management company, and it's hard to keep the staff. Because even if the staff has the capability, well, the tenant base since they haven't been empowered in the right way or haven't been given the right money, the tenant base already has a connotation that they're just not going to be a good person for the property. So you can change the people owning the property, but they're not the face, right? Your leasing person, your maintenance person, they're the face of the property, right? And so if they haven't done it, usually it's the same thing. They're not going to turn around and do it. In the management company, there can be a lot of different reasons, but very rarely, I think, very rarely, maybe one time we've kept the management company, and just because it was one we'd used before and they had the property and the owner just wasn't giving them any funds, right? So they were limited.
CapEx, right? Things they needed.
Correct. And so, but it's very tough to take on.
That's a great analogy though, because it's true, right? It's like sometimes when you're taking over a property, you're usually fixing problems. There's some deficiencies that you're going in there to fix anyways. And so it takes the right vision. And this is really important too, is having that relationship with whoever's going to be your property manager. They've got to see the vision the way that you see it, right? You got to be very congruent. Because if you're not, if the management company, because I see a lot of owner operators like, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then they're telling the management company, and I see like rolled eyes, like going, oh, okay.
That's so well said, because sometimes what happens is that if you want to be a absentee owner and you're not really giving the business plan of what the property manager wants to be, well, the property manager may think they're doing the right thing because you haven't really what you want. And then you get this back like, what's happening here? And you think it's horrible. And then now there's no clear communication, right? And the same front, you need to ask the property management company if your plan can actually be accomplished. If you're like, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to turn all the tenants, right? Kick everybody out. We're going to, do $2,000 of renovation. All of a sudden, we're going to $700 of rent a month, right? Like you may have this magical plan, but you may not realize that the property you have here is, 2 blocks out of the good school system, or it's right in the opposite way of path of progress, right? So you could have this great plan, but it may work 5 miles away, but it's not going to work where you are, right? And so you do want the team that's not just yesing you and being like, listen, like, understand your thought track, but this doesn't work. Here's what can work on this property. Yeah,
or like it's going to take this much more capital to do it. You got to bring it to this level to get that. We think you're right, you're close, but until everybody's on the same page, you're not. And whatever your property management company believes is the reality. It's not what you believe.
Correct, 100%. So
cool. Well, listen, as we get ready to wrap up, man, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
This is great. Good questions.
Some really good content, I think, just overall how this thing works, right? And I love our analogies. Any books that you've been reading lately that you would like to share that you really feel like has turned the dial for you a little bit?
So what is the one I'm reading now? It's off like this Stoics, like meditation. It was like how to think like a Roman emperor. That's been pretty interesting. So just a lot of the thought track on that is that, so like there's many takeaways, but like one time is that like we overreact, right? We always overreact based on the worst case scenario when the worst case scenario rarely ever happens instead of just taking things as they are.
Yeah.
Right. It's like we worry about so many things in life that actually never happen. And if we could just take away our worries and focus on the moment, you think about how much you're going to accomplish.
Yeah. You get so much more done, right?
Yeah, even multifamily, like, oh, if I go buy that building, then all of a sudden it's going to burn down and the worst thing's going to happen. And then I'm going to go bankrupt and they're going to come take my dog. And I was like, what? Like, where did that come from? Like we're not even anywhere even making offers or underwriting deals. Like you can't go to the worst case because that's what we're set up to do. We're set up to say, the worst case scenario is going to happen, but if you give credit to the worst case, then in life you have to get credit to the best case.
Yes.
Best case, you go there, you buy this property, you do help so many people, right? You make it a better place to live. You help all your investors; they make fabulous returns, and it's the set of your new life, right? Like there's got to be two sides of the story. We can't always just say the worst case.
Yeah, and it's the one that you focus on the most. It happens.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. What any advice? So I always like to say there's like usually two groups of type of people that well, really three, but your new investors and some of our mid-sized tiered operators out there. What advice would you like to give them? Or if there's a piece of advice for each different group, right? Would love to hear some final thoughts on that.
I would say my limitation is always based on me not knowing a good question to get a good answer. Right. So typically if I'm getting a bad answer or the answer I don't think is right, it's because I don't know a question that's the right question to get where I want to go. And lots of that comes from the action of doing. So if you want to go out and buy multifamily, get yourself experience by surrounding yourself, listen to podcasts like this and just learning about the space, but then you have to go hear a step and take a step because that's going to lead you to the next questions you need to take the next step. And if we can get back from having to try and worry about, I need to have the perfect plan, right? Like, oh, I need to have the perfect plan, have business cards, have a website, do all these other things in this part. Sometimes you need to take a step because that step's going to tell you that you're actually going in completely the wrong direction. You're like, okay, now I just need to turn around, right? And that's usually most of everything you need to do in this space. Take a step. You're not going to fall off the cliff if you're not too far, but it will expose you to where you want to go and whether you're at least on the right direction or not.
That's a great one. Love it. Take a step, man. And then let the cards fly, man. See where you're at, right?
Yeah.
Take it all
it's
in,
like if
right?
you stub your toe, you're like, okay, that wasn't right. So don't go that way again, right?
Yeah.
That's like anything, even in real estate, you're like, I don't know what space to go in. I don't know what to tell you. Go try one, right? Because it's better to try something and be like, I don't like that. And at least be like, okay, I'm not going to flip a house anymore. I'll go do the next thing and figure that out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that was part of us is that people say, well, could you have jumped all you did and gone to multifamily? I guess, but in the same front, all those added value, right? Every experience we did with all the different projects in real estate added value to where I am today.
Right.
I don't know. I can't factor in all the pieces, but there's a lot that built us to where we were.
Yeah. My only regret is I didn't go harder in 2011. Right. So I was like, dude, I just wish I would have pushed myself a little bit more, bought some more properties back then. I mean, oh my gosh.
I love it.
So listen, how do people get a hold of you and find you?
Sure. So appreciate you having me on. You can find me at yarusiholdings.com. That's our website, or Jason at yarusiholdings.com, YARUSI holdings.com. Find everything we've been doing. A lot of what we talked about today are our current offerings and about our mastermind as well.
Right. Awesome. Well, go check him out. And Jason, I want to thank you so much for coming on this podcast and really just, we just had a great conversation. I really enjoyed it, by the way. And, one of the things you said earlier is like, you talked about mindset, right? A lot today. And I think that is congruent with what I believe. And ultimately, success happens. The first place it ever shows up and manifests itself is in between these two ears, right? It comes with an idea, a thought. I want to be different. I want to challenge myself. I want to do that 100-mile marathon. But what's the first step? Let me just get to that little spot. I love that analogy because that really is the journey of real estate. It's like, don't look at always the end of the goal, right? Just focus on your next little piece that you got to do. Yeah. Winning is a habit of small, successful steps. You just keep taking, sometimes like you said, Jason, you got to take a step to realize, hey, maybe this is not the right spot. I got to pivot a little bit, take another little step, get into it. But guys, when you do that thing and you turn on that mind and you activate it, because most of us, I promise you, you are not using it right? Not only do you got to tell yourself and believe it, you've got to feed that thought daily. Daily affirmations, guys, is how you get it done. And at the end of the day, it always is like how we end every podcast, is if you believe it, you can achieve it, and your paradise is possible.